I've always been the kind of guy who keeps to himself. I pay my dues, mow my lawn, and wave politely at neighbors. I didn't join the gossip circle, and I definitely didn't care about HOA politics. That's probably why they thought I wouldn't notice. But when you come home from a 2-week vacation and find footprints through your backyard, a broken lock on your gate, and muddy tracks leading straight to your tool shed, you notice. And when your neighbor whispers, "They were snooping around while you were gone," you stop being polite. You start investigating. It all started 2 weeks earlier. My wife, Hannah, and I had finally taken a long overdue trip, a quiet getaway to British Columbia. No work calls, no emails, no HOA notices. We rented a lakeside cabin with no cell service, just peace. Before we left, I made sure everything at home was locked tight, backyard shed secured, cameras set to motion alerts, and the gate chained. Our home sits at the edge of the community, part of the HOA's jurisdiction, but just barely. The HOA president, Nancy Greer, loved to remind me of that. She had this way of showing up at meetings just to emphasize, "You're technically within our boundaries, Mr. Dawson." Technically. She ran our HOA like a queen running her castle, blonde bob always perfect, tablet in hand, every rule memorized. The kind of person who'd fine you for your trash cans being visible for 10 minutes after pickup. So imagine my shock when we got back home and my neighbor, Eli, met me at the driveway with wide eyes. "Man, you're not gonna like this," he said, scratching his neck. "Nancy and 2 of her board buddies were on your property last week, said it was a routine inspection." I frowned. "What inspection? I didn't request anything." "That's what I told M," Eli muttered, "but they just walked in, no notice, no nothing. They even went around your backyard, pointing at your shed like they owned the place." My stomach dropped. Routine inspection while I was out of town, no notice, no permission, and this wasn't some casual peeking over the fence. They had entered my locked property. I went straight to check my gate. The chain had been cut clean. The padlock hung twisted like it had been forced. My shed door was slightly ajar. I pulled it open, tools scattered everywhere, mud prints on the floor. Someone had clearly gone through everything. Hannah gasped. "Oh my God, they broke in." I clenched my jaw. "Yeah, and they're gonna regret it." I pulled up my phone, checking the footage from my home security app. I'd installed motion-triggered cameras before leaving just in case. And there it was, timestamp, July 14th, 2:37 p.m. 3 figures stepping through my backyard. Nancy Greer, her vice president, Todd, clipboard in hand, and Linda, the HOA's compliance officer. They weren't inspecting, they were searching. Nancy was seen pulling open my shed door while Todd took photos of my backyard like it was a crime scene. And the audio, clear as day. Nancy on camera, "He's definitely in violation. That fence is 2 inches over code. We'll issue a notice when he's back." Todd, "Shouldn't we have his consent to be here?" Nancy, "Routine inspection. He won't even know we were here." Oh, I knew. I replayed the clip 3 times, anger building with every word. The next morning, I walked straight into the HOA office. Nancy was there, typing away like nothing had happened. "Morning, Nancy," I said flatly. She looked up with that fake, sugary smile. "Mr. Dawson, you're back. How was your trip?" "Lovely," I said. "Except for the part where I watched you trespass on my property." The color drained from her face, but she recovered fast. "I beg your pardon?" I placed my phone on the counter and played the footage. Her voice filled the office. "He won't even know we were here." Todd, who was standing nearby, looked like he wanted to disappear. Nancy's expression hardened. "Mr. Dawson, that was a routine HOA inspection. We have every right to ensure properties meet neighborhood standards." "Routine," I said. "Then where's the written notice, the one you're legally required to send?" She shifted uncomfortably. "We didn't think it was necessary for private property," I snapped. "You broke a locked gate, Nancy. That's not an inspection, that's trespassing." The office went dead silent. I took a slow breath. "I've already spoken with my attorney, and I'll be filing a police report today." Her mask finally cracked. "Now hold on, Mr. Dawson." "No," I cut her off. "You hold on, because this isn't just HOA overreach anymore. This is criminal." I turned to leave, but not before looking back at Todd. He couldn't even meet my eyes. That night, I uploaded the footage to a private cloud and emailed a copy to my lawyer. But before I could even wake up the next morning, I received an HOA violation notice in my inbox. "Property violation, unapproved shed construction, fence height discrepancy, and landscaping neglect. Please respond within 14 days. My hands shook. They were retaliating. They broke into my property, got caught, and now they were trying to bury me in fines. Hannah put a hand on my shoulder. "They're scared," she said softly. "They're trying to cover it up." She was right, and the best part, I had everything on record. I wasn't just some random homeowner they could intimidate. They had no idea that I wasn't only an engineer. I was the assistant county building inspector, and I was about to show them what real inspections looked like. Speech balloon, what would you do if your HOA entered your property without permission? Would you let it go or fight back like I did? When I woke up the next morning, I wasn't angry anymore. I was focused. Nancy and her board thought they could intimidate me with fines and HOA jargon, but the moment they stepped onto my property, they stopped playing homeowner politics and started playing my game. Because unlike them, I knew exactly where the legal lines were drawn, and I had the badge to prove it. That morning, I walked into my office at the county building department, coffee in hand, still replaying the footage in my head. I didn't mention it to anyone yet, no need to raise eyebrows before I had evidence, but I started digging. First stop, the HOA's permits. Every HOA has to file their community development plans, maintenance contracts, and inspection records through the county's public system. And lucky for me, I had full access. A few clicks later, my screen filled with documents, renewal dates, property lines, fence codes, and maintenance logs. Something jumped out immediately. Nancy's HOA had been filing routine inspections almost every month, but not the kind that followed procedure. They were marked as unverified, meaning they never had proper authorization or resident approval. Dozens of them. Half the community had been inspected illegally. I leaned back in my chair. "Well, Nancy," I muttered. "Looks like your little power trip just became a county issue." That afternoon, I met my neighbor Eli outside. He was trimming his hedges, looking nervous. "Hey," I called out, "you got a second?" He nodded quickly. "What's going on, man? I heard Nancy's been asking around about you." "Yeah," I said, smirking. "She's about to get what's coming. Tell me, did she ever enter your property?" Eli paused, eyes darting to his front porch camera. "Couple months ago, yeah." Said she was checking fence alignment. I thought it was weird, but she was with Todd, so I didn't question it. I sighed. "And she didn't have written notice?" He shook his head. "Perfect," I said quietly, because now it wasn't just about me. It was a pattern, a habit of breaking the law under the guise of HOA authority. That evening, I drafted an official complaint to the county's Department of Property Compliance. I laid out everything: the trespass, the footage, the retaliation fines, and the pattern of illegal inspections. Then I attached my video evidence. The next morning, I got an email from the county investigator. "Thank you, Mr. Dawson. This will be handled immediately. You are advised not to confront the HOA further until we've reviewed the evidence." Yeah, that advice didn't stick. Because when I got home that day, I found something new taped to my door. Notice of property lien issued by Lakeside HOA reason. Repeated noncompliance and obstruction of HOA operations. They were trying to freeze my property. Hannah's voice trembled as she read it. "Can they even do this?" "No," I said, my tone low. "They're bluffing, and I'm done playing nice." I grabbed my phone and dialed Nancy's number. She picked up on the second ring, cheerful as ever. "Mr. Dawson, I was just about to send you an email. You put a lien on my property?" I interrupted. She paused, her voice tightening. "It's standard procedure for unresolved violations." "There are no violations," I said, "and even if there were, you don't have the authority to issue a lien. Only the county can do that." Silence. "Nancy," I continued, "do you realize you've just crossed into felony territory? Fraudulent filing, illegal entry, harassment. Do you really want to go down this road?" Her tone turned cold. "You don't scare me, Mr. Dawson. The HOA operates within its rights." "Then I hope you're ready to explain those rights to a judge." I hung up. Hannah looked at me wide-eyed. "You think she'll back off?" I shook my head. "No, she'll dig in, but so will I by the end of the week." I'd filed a formal trespassing charge with the county sheriff's office and provided all video evidence. The deputy who took my statement nodded slowly after watching the footage. "They broke a lock," he said. "That's not an inspection. That's forced entry. We'll look into it." But that's not all. Two other neighbors, Eli and a woman named Janet, came forward after I told them what happened. Both had similar stories: HOA members walking into their backyards, taking photos, leaving notices without any prior warning. It was bigger than me now, and the best part, the county investigator called me personally the next day. "Mr. Dawson," he said, "we reviewed your footage and your documents. You're absolutely right. None of their inspections were approved. We're moving forward with an audit of the Lakeside HOA immediately." I smiled for the first time in days. 3 days later, I was standing outside when Nancy pulled up in her shiny white SUV. Her heels clicked on the pavement as she approached, all smiles again, but this time I could see the crack in her confidence. "Mr. Dawson," she began sweetly, "I understand there's been some confusion. Perhaps we could." "Save it," I said. "You'll be getting a visit from county officials tomorrow. Real inspectors, not your clipboard patrol." Her smile faltered. "Excuse me. You've been running unauthorized property entries and filing false liens," I said. "You might want to start looking for a lawyer." For a moment, she just stood there, blinking. Then her eyes narrowed. "You have no idea what you've started," she hissed. "Oh, I think I do," I replied. "It's called accountability." That night, I couldn't sleep. Part of me was thrilled justice was finally in motion. But another part of me worried what Nancy might try next, because people like her. They don't just back down, they retaliate. And sure enough, at 11:47 p.m., my phone buzzed. Motion detected on the backyard camera. I opened the app and froze. There they were. Nancy and Todd in my backyard again. Flashlights scanning the shed, except this time the sheriff's department had been expecting it. I tapped one button on my screen, live dispatch. And within minutes, red and blue lights flashed across the neighborhood. Nancy's arrogance had finally crossed the last line. Speech balloon, what would you do if your HOA president showed up on your property in the middle of the night? Would you confront them or let the police handle it? The red and blue lights flashing through my living room blinds that night were the most satisfying sight I'd seen in months. My cameras had caught Nancy and Todd creeping through my backyard like burglars, flashlights scanning around my demolished gate and shed again. Except this time they weren't alone. They were being watched by my cameras, and now by 2 county deputies pulling up behind them. I slipped on my jacket and stepped outside just as the deputies were confronting them. Nancy stood there, all poise and pearls, clutching her clipboard like a shield. Todd hovered awkwardly behind her, pale and sweating. One of the deputies, Officer Grant, gestured toward the cut lock on my fence. "Ma'am, can you explain why you're on this property after midnight?" Nancy's voice came out smooth, too smooth. "We're with the Lakeside Homeowners Association," she said. "We were conducting a follow-up compliance inspection. There have been reports of code violations." Grant raised an eyebrow. "At midnight," Nancy gave a polite smile. "Our board works around residents' schedules." I almost laughed. "Officer," I said, stepping forward, "they've broken onto my property twice now. I have video of both incidents, and I already filed a formal trespassing report." Nancy's head whipped toward me, her mask slipping. "You're exaggerating, Mr. Dawson." "No," I interrupted, holding up my phone. "Would you like to see the footage again? Because it's streaming live to county evidence storage." The second deputy glanced at Grant, then said quietly, "This matches the complaint from last week." Grant nodded slowly. "All right, ma'am, sir, I'm going to need you to step away from the property. Hands visible, please." Todd looked like he wanted to vanish. "Nancy, maybe we should just—" "Quiet," she hissed. "This is a misunderstanding." I folded my arms. "Yeah, Nancy, a misunderstanding that involves a cut lock, trespassing, and falsified HOA liens." Grant turned toward her again. "You're being recorded, ma'am. Do you understand you don't have legal authority to enter a resident's property without notice or consent?" For a moment she faltered, her mouth opened, then closed again. Then she tried to double down. "I was ensuring neighborhood compliance," she said firmly. "If Mr. Dawson would cooperate instead of threatening legal action, this wouldn't be necessary." Grant's tone hardened. "Ma'am, you're not above the law. Step aside, please." As they separated Nancy and Todd for questioning, Hannah joined me on the porch, clutching her robe. "Are they actually arresting her?" she whispered. "Maybe," I said quietly, "but even if they don't tonight, she's done." Sure enough, after 10 tense minutes, Officer Grant approached me. "Mr. Dawson," he said, "we're detaining them for now. We'll file a full report with the district attorney. Do you want to press additional charges?" I nodded. "Absolutely, for trespassing, harassment, and property damage." Grant gave a small, approving nod. "Good call. I've seen HOA disputes, but this is next level." As the officers led Nancy and Todd toward their patrol car, she turned back toward me, eyes blazing. "You're making a mistake," she shouted. "You'll regret this." I smiled faintly. "You already did." The neighborhood was buzzing by morning. Apparently, several residents had seen the flashing lights and filmed the scene from their windows. One clip even made its way to a local community Facebook group with the caption, "HOA president arrested? Lakeside's drama just got real." Within hours, it had hundreds of comments, and surprisingly, almost everyone sided with me. They've been pushing boundaries for years. Nancy fined me for my mailbox color last month. About time someone stood up to her. It felt good, not because I wanted attention, but because people were finally seeing what I'd been dealing with. Later that day, I got a call from the county investigator, Mr. Larson. "Morning, Dawson," he said. "Heard there was some excitement at your place last night." "You could say that," I replied. He chuckled. "Well, that just made my job easier. We already had an audit in progress, but this gives us cause to expand it." "Expand it?" I asked. "Yeah, turns out Nancy's been filing fake maintenance reimbursements using HOA funds. About $15,000 in unaccounted inspection expenses." I froze. "You're kidding." "Wish I was," Larson said. "We're working with the DA's office now. I can't give details, but let's just say this isn't going to end with trespassing charges." For the first time in weeks, I felt genuine relief. This wasn't just personal anymore, it was justice. That evening, Eli came by with 2 beers in hand. "Man, I saw the flashing lights last night," he said, grinning. "You actually got her arrested?" I nodded. "Caught her in the act. Guess the HOA routine just got a little less routine," he laughed. "You're a legend, dude. Everyone in the neighborhood is talking about it." good, I said. They should know what kind of people they've been trusting with their money. Eli's smile faded. You think they'll try to cover it up? I shook my head. Not this time. The county's involved now. Everything's on record. The next morning, my email pinged with a message from the county's legal department. Subject: Notice of suspension. Lakeside HOA. Dear Mr. Dawson, the Lakeside Estates Homeowners Association's operations have been temporarily suspended pending investigation into misconduct and misuse of authority. Thank you for your cooperation and documentation. County Legal Affairs Division. I just stared at the screen for a moment, letting it sink in. Nancy's entire empire, her rules, her fines, her threats, had just been shut down. But then a new email appeared from an anonymous address. You think you've won, Dawson? This isn't over. No name, no signature. I frowned. Looks like someone's still loyal to the Queen. Hannah placed a hand on my arm. You're not safe yet, are you? Maybe not, I said softly, but she's cornered, and cornered people make mistakes. I looked out the window at the half-empty HOA office across the street. Soon it wouldn't just be Nancy facing consequences, because when people misuse power, especially under the law, it always comes back around. And I was about to make sure it did. Speech balloon: what would you do if your HOA president was caught sneaking onto your property at night? Would you confront them or let karma and the police take care of it? 2 days after Nancy's arrest, the Lakeside Estates community looked like a war zone, not in chaos, but in silence. The HOA office was closed. The bulletin boards, usually cluttered with rule reminders and violation warnings, were empty. The same people who used to wave cheerfully at Nancy now avoided mentioning her name, and for once the neighborhood didn't feel controlled, it felt free. But I knew this wasn't over. Not yet. That Monday morning, I received an official email from County Investigator Larson. Mr. Dawson, please be available this afternoon. Our team is conducting a full audit of the Lakeside HOA's financials and operations. Your testimony and video evidence will be used to verify resident complaints. County Compliance Division. The time had come. I arrived at the HOA office around 2 p.m. The usually pristine lobby was now lined with boxes, binders, files, invoices, all neatly labeled but suspiciously incomplete. Inside, Larson and his team were already setting up. 2 investigators were photographing documents while another flipped through spreadsheets. When Larson saw me, he smiled slightly. Ah, our whistleblower, I smirked. Guess I've been called worse. He motioned me over. Take a look at this. He pointed to a series of invoices on his laptop, each one labeled as routine inspection and compliance services, paid to an LLC called Greer Property Oversight. I blinked. Greer, as in Nancy Greer? Bingo, Larson said. She's been billing the HOA for fake maintenance inspections through a shell company she owned, almost $17,000 in the last year. I whistled. That's not just rule breaking, that's embezzlement. Larson nodded. Exactly, and you weren't the only victim. We've already interviewed 6 homeowners who said she entered their properties without notice. It's a pattern of abuse. As we spoke, another investigator brought over a stack of papers. We found something else, she said. Meeting minutes, but these versions don't match the ones filed with the county. Larson frowned. Meaning? She's been altering records to hide unapproved expenditures. He turned to me. Mr. Dawson, your footage and your report gave us the legal grounds to... Deeper, what we're seeing here is systemic fraud. For a moment, I just stood there, taking it all in. Nancy hadn't just abused her power, she'd built a personal empire off it. Guess the Queen's castle wasn't built to code, I muttered. Larson chuckled. Not even close. Later that afternoon, I stepped outside for some air. That's when I saw Todd, the HOA vice president, sitting in his car across the street. He looked rough, eyes sunken, hair messy, no clipboard in sight. When he saw me, he got out slowly and walked over. Dawson, he said quietly. Can we talk? I folded my arms. Depends. Are you here as the HOA's errand boy or as a man who's finally had enough? He sighed. The second one. Go on. He looked around nervously. I didn't know it would go this far. Nancy told us those inspections were standard, that she had approval from the county. I started to suspect something was off when she started handling all the invoices herself. So you knew, I said flatly. I knew something wasn't right, he admitted. But she scared people, Dawson. Anyone who questioned her got fined or kicked off the board. I should have spoken up. Yeah, I said quietly. You should have, he swallowed hard. She's trying to blame me for everything now, said I signed the inspection reports. I tilted my head. Did you? He hesitated. Yes, but under her direction. She said it was standard HOA practice. I let that hang for a moment before answering. Then do the right thing now, talk to the county, tell them what really happened. Todd nodded slowly. I will. And as he walked back to his car, I realized something. The board wasn't loyal anymore. Nancy's power was crumbling from the inside out. That night, I got another call, this time from Officer Grant, the same deputy who'd caught Nancy trespassing. "Evening, Dawson," he said. "You'll want to hear this. The DA's office is filing formal charges, fraud, trespassing, and misuse of HOA funds." I exhaled slowly. "About time." He added, "Oh, and one more thing, her house. Turns out she built that fancy lakeside deck without a permit. County inspectors flagged it this morning." I laughed out loud. "You can't make this up," Grant chuckled. "Guess she failed her own inspection." The next day, a public notice went out to all residents. Notice of administrative suspension. The Lakeside Estates HOA Board of Directors has been temporarily dissolved pending legal review. A court-appointed manager will assume oversight until further notice. Within an hour, my phone blew up with messages. "Eli, she's done, bro." "Janet, we're finally free of her crazy rules." Unknown number. "Hope you're happy. You destroyed this community." I looked at that last one and smiled bitterly. Destroy it? No, I just tore down the lies holding it together. That afternoon, I returned home to find a county vehicle parked by my driveway. Larson stepped out, holding a folder. "Got the official statement from the DA," he said. "They're pressing charges against Nancy Greer and 2 board members. You might be called as a witness." "Happy to testify," I said. He smiled. "You did good, Dawson. Most people just complain. You actually took action." I nodded, though part of me still felt a strange mix of satisfaction and anger. "Thanks," I said, "but you know it shouldn't take a county inspector to get justice in his own neighborhood." Larson's smile faded. "You're right, but sometimes it does." That night, I sat by the living room window watching the reflection of the lake under the moonlight. Hannah joined me with 2 mugs of tea. "You did it," she said softly. "She's finally being held accountable." "Yeah," I said, staring out at the quiet street. "But I can't help wondering how many other HOAs pull the same thing, just without someone watching." She placed her hand over mine. "Then maybe you were meant to be the one who exposed it." I smiled faintly. "Maybe so." My phone buzzed, a notification from a local news outlet. "Breaking. Former HOA president arrested for fraud and trespassing, county inspector credited for exposing corruption." I leaned back in my chair and exhaled. Nancy built her kingdom on fear, fines, and fake authority. And in the end, it collapsed not because of revenge, but because of truth. Speech balloon. What do you think? Was the HOA president's punishment fair? Would you forgive or fight back if someone abused their power like this? The county courthouse smelled faintly of old paper and coffee, the kind of place where truth and lies always fought for space. It had been 3 months since Nancy's arrest. 3 months of silence, tension, and rumors swirling around the lakeside community. The HOA was under county control now, its bank accounts frozen, and Nancy had hired one of the most expensive defense attorneys in the region, a slick-talking man named Charles Devine who specialized in turning villains into victims. I wasn't nervous about testifying. I'd built hundreds of cases as a building inspector. But this time, it wasn't about structures or safety codes. This time, it was personal. When I walked into the courtroom that morning, Nancy was already there, sitting perfectly straight in a tailored navy suit, pearl earrings glinting under the lights. She looked calm, composed, like she hadn't been the woman sneaking through my backyard at midnight with a flashlight. Her lawyer whispered something to her, and she gave me a small, icy smile. The same one she used to give at HOA meetings when she fined people for overgrown lawns. The prosecutor, Ms. Lee, approached me quietly. "You ready, Mr. Dawson?" "As I'll ever be," I said. She nodded. "We'll keep it simple, tell the truth. The footage speaks for itself." I glanced toward the evidence screen at the front of the room, paused on a still image of Nancy standing in my backyard with Todd, flashlight in hand. I almost pitied her. Almost. When the judge entered, the courtroom fell silent. "Case of the county versus Nancy Greer. Charges include trespassing, falsification of records, and embezzlement of HOA funds." Nancy's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, my client has been the subject of an exaggerated campaign led by one disgruntled resident, a Mr. Dawson, who, I remind the court, is not only a member of the HOA but a county inspector with potential conflicts of interest." He turned toward me dramatically. "He used his position to retaliate against my client for enforcing community standards." The audience, mostly lakeside residents, murmured. The judge lifted an eyebrow. "Mr. Devine, are you implying the county's entire investigation was biased?" Devine smiled smoothly. "Simply saying appearances matter, Your Honor." Ms. Lee stood calmly. "Then let's look at appearances." She gestured to the screen. "Play the video." The courtroom dimmed as the footage played. Nancy, Todd, and Linda, all clearly visible on my security camera, forcing open my locked gate, entering my backyard and rifling through my shed. Then Nancy's voice echoed through the speakers. "He's definitely in violation. That fence is 2 inches over code. We'll issue a notice when he's back." The judge leaned forward slightly. "This was recorded on the defendant's property?" "Yes, Your Honor," Ms. Lee said, "without notice, consent, or authorization." Devine tried to recover. A simple misunderstanding, routine inspection procedure. Ms. Lee smiled faintly. At 2:37 p.m. on a weekday while the homeowner was out of town and without any documented approval. And this, Your Honor, she held up another document, is a falsified inspection record with Mr. Dawson's signature forged at the bottom. The judge frowned. Forged? I raised my hand. Your Honor, that's not my signature. I never approved or conducted any inspection for the Lakeside HOA. The judge looked at Nancy. Ms. Greer, would you like to explain why your board submitted falsified documents under a county officer's name? Nancy's calm facade began to crack. Her lips tightened. My assistant must have made an error, she said quickly. Ms. Lee crossed her arms. An error that led to $17,000 in fraudulent reimbursements to your personal LLC? Gasps rippled through the room. Nancy's lawyer whispered urgently to her, but she ignored him. Those funds were for legitimate maintenance. Which properties? Ms. Lee interrupted. We've checked. None of those addresses received any service, not one. The judge scribbled something on his notes. Continue. When it was my turn to testify, I stood at the witness stand, feeling the weight of every eye in the room. Ms. Lee smiled encouragingly. Mr. Dawson, can you explain how you first discovered the defendant's unauthorized entry? Yes, I said. I came home from vacation and found my gate cut open and my shed disturbed. I reviewed my security footage and found the HOA president and 2 board members trespassing on my property. And what did you do next? I confronted her directly. She claimed it was a routine inspection. When I asked for documentation, she had none. Shortly after, I received false violation notices and an illegal lien threat, clearly in retaliation. The defense attorney stood. Mr. Dawson, isn't it true that, as a county inspector, you had access to private information about the HOA? I nodded. Yes, but that information became relevant after I was victimized. I followed all legal reporting channels. The investigation was handled independently by county officials. Still, Devine said, pacing. Wouldn't you say you had personal motivation to discredit Ms. Greer? I met his gaze. I had motivation to stop someone from abusing power. That's not personal, that's justice. Even the judge seemed to hide a faint smirk. After several hours of testimony, the evidence was overwhelming. Audit reports, bank statements, false invoices, every thread led back to Nancy. The prosecutor's closing argument was sharp and surgical. This isn't about HOA rules. This is about arrogance, the belief that authority means ownership, that rules are weapons, and that no one will ever fight back. But someone did. She nodded toward me. And because of that, this community and this county are safer from people who think they're above the law. Nancy's lawyer tried one last desperate play. My client acted in good faith. The paperwork may have been messy, but her intent was to maintain order. The judge's gavel hit once. Order doesn't come from deceit, Mr. Devine. It comes from integrity. He turned to Nancy. This court finds the defendant guilty on all counts: trespassing, falsification of public records, and embezzlement. The sound of murmuring filled the room. Nancy's shoulders sagged. For the first time, she looked small, not powerful, not composed, just small. As the bailiff escorted her out, she turned to glare at me one last time. You think you've won, Dawson? She hissed. People like me always come back. I held her gaze calmly. Then make sure your next comeback's up to code. Even the bailiff chuckled. After the hearing, Ms. Lee approached me. You did good, she said. You handled yourself like a pro. Thanks, I replied, just glad it's over. It's not, she said. The county's opening a task force to investigate other HOAs for similar practices. You might have started something bigger. I smiled faintly. Then maybe it was worth it. Outside the courthouse, I looked up at the sky, clear, bright, peaceful. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. No more fines, no more threats. Just quiet, the kind you earn when you fight back the right way. Speech balloon, what do you think was justice served? Would you take your HOA to court if they abused their power like this? Or would you walk away and let karma handle it? 3 weeks after the verdict, the courthouse steps looked different, quieter. No news vans, no angry HOA members waving papers, just the soft hum of a Monday morning. But inside, tension still buzzed through the air. Today was sentencing day. Nancy Greer, once the untouchable queen of Lakeside Estates, was about to learn what it felt like to be on the other side of the rules she loved to weaponize. I took my usual seat behind the prosecution table. My hands were steady, but my chest felt tight. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about closure for me and for everyone she'd trampled over the years. Nancy entered in cuffs, flanked by 2 deputies. Her once perfect hair was pulled back tightly, her face pale and hollow. Gone was the confident HOA president who used to stroll the neighborhood barking orders. Now she looked like someone trying to remember who she was before power corrupted her. Her lawyer wasn't even smiling anymore. Charles Devine sat stiffly beside her, flipping through papers like he couldn't wait for it to be over. The judge entered, his voice firm as he began. Ms. Greer, this court has reviewed your actions, the evidence presented, and your conduct throughout these proceedings. You were entrusted with the management of community funds and property, yet you exploited that trust for personal gain. Nancy didn't look up. Your actions caused financial harm, emotional distress, and community division. For these reasons, I hereby sentence you to 4 years in county correctional custody with eligibility for parole after 18 months, restitution of $22,000, and community service totaling 300 hours upon release. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Even though part of me had expected it, hearing the words out loud still hit differently. 4 years. That was a long time to think about every broken rule, every forged signature, every neighbor she'd bullied. Nancy finally looked up at the judge. You're destroying my life over paperwork, she said bitterly. Everyone here benefited from my work. I kept order when no one else would. The judge sighed. Order without integrity is tyranny, Ms. Greer. Maybe time away from the HOA will teach you that. The gavel came down. Court is adjourned. Outside the courthouse, a crowd had gathered, neighbors, reporters, even a few county officials. Someone whispered, "That's her, the HOA president who went too far." Another replied, "He's the inspector who caught her." I didn't say anything, I just kept walking. But as I reached the steps, Ms. Lee, the prosecutor, caught up with me. "She's headed to processing now," she said softly. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said, "just surreal." Ms. Lee nodded. "It usually is, but you did the right thing, Dawson. Most people would have walked away." I smiled faintly. Walking away is what she expected. I wasn't about to give her that satisfaction. Later that afternoon, I drove back to Lakeside Estates. It felt strange, the same streets, the same lake, but the energy was lighter somehow. The HOA office, once Nancy's personal kingdom, was dark and empty. A bright orange notice of investigation sticker was plastered on the door. Across the street, my neighbor Eli was mowing his lawn. He waved me over. "Hey, hero," he shouted, grinning. "You see the news? Nancy's getting 4 years." I chuckled. "Yeah, I was there." He turned off his mower and leaned on the handle. "Man, people are celebrating like it's a holiday. There's even talk about starting a community barbecue to mark the end of the HOA reign of terror." I laughed. "They might want to wait until the audit's fully over." Eli frowned. "Wait, there's more?" "Yeah," I said, lowering my voice. "The county found other discrepancies. Apparently some of the funds were funneled through a landscaping company that doesn't exist." His eyes widened. "So she had a ghost contractor. More like a ghost accountant," I said. "And the kicker, the company's registered under Todd's name." Eli whistled. "Oh man, he's next, isn't he?" "Probably," I said. "They're not done digging." That evening, I sat on my porch with Hannah. The lake shimmered in the sunset, calm, golden, perfect. "I still can't believe it," she said quietly. "After everything she did, it's finally over." "Almost," I said. "There's still fallout to clean up, but yeah, we made it." She looked at me for a moment. "You didn't just stand up for yourself. You changed how this whole community works." I smiled, watching a couple of kids ride bikes down the road, something you never saw when Nancy was in charge. "I just did what anyone should when power gets abused," I said. She nudged me playfully. "Not anyone. Most people wouldn't risk it. You did." 2 days later, my county inbox pinged with a message from Investigator Larson. Subject: Follow up on HOA case. Hey Dawson, turns out Greer's corruption wasn't isolated. We've uncovered similar financial misconduct in 3 other associations, all using the same accounting firm. We'll need your expertise for a task force audit. Interested? Larson, I leaned back in my chair, smiling. So this wasn't just about one HOA. This was bigger. A network of power, greed, and intimidation hiding behind community management. Nancy was just the start. That night, I posted an update in the local Lakeside Facebook group. "Hey neighbors, the court officially sentenced former HOA President Nancy Greer today. The county will oversee all HOA operations until a new board is democratically elected. Let's rebuild this place the right way, with transparency, fairness, and respect. No more secret inspections. No more threats." Just neighbors again. Within minutes, the comments poured in. "Finally, some justice. You're the reason we got our neighborhood back. Thank you, Dawson. You made us believe in accountability again." I read through each one, smiling softly. For once, Lakeside felt united. The next morning, I stopped by the HOA office to check on the audit process. The county seal on the door reflected the morning sun, and inside, new officials were setting up desks. One of them, a young intern, smiled at me. "Mr. Dawson, right? The inspector." "Guilty," I said with a grin. She laughed. "You're kind of a legend around here. Everyone keeps saying you took down the HOA president single-handedly." I chuckled. "Trust me, I just did my job." As I turned to leave, she added, "Funny thing, one of the files we found suggests there's another property linked to the old HOA fund. A cabin actually under Nancy's name but registered outside the neighborhood." I paused. "A cabin?" She nodded. "Yeah." Seems she was stashing HOA money into a vacation property. I couldn't help but smirk. Guess even from prison she'll still have one last code violation to answer for. That night, I stood on my deck watching the lake again, peaceful, still, glowing under the moonlight. It felt different now. Not because Nancy was gone, but because the fear she brought with her had finally lifted. No more notices, no more intimidation, just peace. And as I watched the reflection of the stars dance across the water, I realized something. Sometimes justice doesn't come easy. It takes patience, persistence, and proof. But when it does, when it finally lands, it's worth every battle scar. Speech balloon, what would you do if you found out your HOA president was hiding stolen funds in a secret property? 2 weeks after Nancy's sentencing, I thought things would finally quiet down. The HOA was under temporary county administration, residents were relieved, and for once the lakeside community actually felt like a neighborhood again. Kids were playing outside. People smiled when they passed each other. Even the lake looked brighter somehow, as if the water itself was relieved. But peace has a funny way of turning into complacency, and corruption, it doesn't vanish, it hides. I was sitting in my office at the county building one Friday morning when investigator Larson knocked on my door. "Got a minute?" he asked. "Sure, everything all right?" He shut the door behind him, his expression grave. "That depends. You still following the Lakeside case?" I frowned. "I thought we were done. Nancy's behind bars, Todd's under review, and the board's dissolved." Larson sighed and dropped a folder on my desk, the thick kind. The kind filled with things no one wants to read. "Take a look," he said. I opened it. Inside were audit logs, bank statements, and I froze. Half the payments Nancy had approved under the HOA maintenance fund weren't just fake. They were being routed through a consulting firm in another county, registered to a name I recognized, Todd Harrington, her vice president. Except Todd didn't just work for Nancy. He owned 3 companies under aliases. Larson pointed to a chart. He was running a shell game. Each HOA maintenance job Nancy approved was paid to Todd's firm. Then he moved the money again to another LLC that managed regional compliance reviews. I looked up slowly. "That's government money," Larson nodded grimly. "Yep, and that's not the worst part. Those same LLCs received grants from a county housing initiative one Nancy personally lobbied to administer." I exhaled sharply. "You're saying she and Todd were stealing taxpayer funds too?" "Not just stealing," Larson said. "Laundering, using HOA budgets as fronts to disguise it." I leaned back in my chair. "Unbelievable." "Believe it," he said. "And the kicker, someone high up approved those grants, someone inside the county." My stomach sank. "Do we know who?" Larson shook his head. "Not yet, but whoever it is, they've been protecting her for years." That night I couldn't sleep. The thought of it, my own department possibly compromised, made my skin crawl. I got up around midnight and poured myself a drink, staring out at the lake through the glass doors. The water was still and dark, peaceful, deceptive. Behind me, Hannah stirred. "You're up again?" she asked softly. "Yeah," I murmured. "Larson brought me something today. Turns out Nancy wasn't just playing HOA queen, she was part of a bigger scheme." She rubbed her eyes. "Bigger how?" "County funds, fake companies, forged approvals. She had help inside." Hannah frowned. "And you're getting involved again, aren't you?" I hesitated. "If I don't, who will?" she sighed. "You've already done your part. You got justice. Maybe let someone else handle this one." I looked back out at the lake. The reflection of the moon shimmered on the surface, still but restless underneath. "Someone else won't care as much," I said quietly. "I've seen what happens when people look the other way." The next morning, I drove to the county archives. Larson had already arranged clearance for me to review the grant files connected to Nancy's HOA. Rows of dusty boxes lined the storage room. I pulled one down, HOA Administrative Subsidies, 2019-2022. Inside were records of dozens of neighborhood associations, all approved by one name stamped on every form, Deputy Director Samuel Crane. Crane, my supervisor, a man I'd had lunch with 3 days ago. By noon, I was sitting in my car, gripping the steering wheel. My mind was racing. I'd known Crane for years. He was charming, smart, respected. He'd even congratulated me when I testified against Nancy. Had he known all along? My phone buzzed. A new message. "Unknown number. Stop digging, Dawson. You don't want to end up like her." My pulse spiked. I looked around instinctively, scanning the parking lot. Nothing, just a few parked cars, an old man feeding birds, a janitor sweeping near the door. I replied, "Who is this?" No response. I exhaled, locking my phone. Maybe it was coincidence, maybe not. Deep down, I already knew I was in it again. That night, I met Larson at a small diner outside town. We sat in a corner booth, low voices blending with the hum of coffee machines. He slid another file toward me. "You were right. We traced the grant approvals. Every HOA Nancy worked with ties back to Crane's office." I stared at the documents. "You have enough to go public?" Larson shook his head. "Not yet. The county's audit board wants more proof before they touch someone at his level. He's too protected. I clenched my jaw. So we build the proof. Larson nodded. Exactly, but you'll need to be careful. If Crane's in this deep, he's got eyes everywhere. I already got a text warning me off, I said quietly. Larson's eyes darkened. Then it's official, you're on their radar. The next morning, I woke to a knock on my door. Eli stood on the porch, holding a stack of envelopes. Hey man, you got mail, but one of these looks weird. He handed me a plain brown envelope with no return address. Inside was a single printed photo, grainy black and white, taken from across the lake. It showed me standing in my backyard 2 nights ago. On the back, a message, "You're being watched." I felt a chill crawl down my spine. Hannah came to the door. "What's wrong?" I didn't answer. I just handed her the photo. Her face went pale. "Dawson, this isn't over, is it?" I shook my head slowly. Not even close. Later that week, Larson and I set up a meeting with the State Compliance Division, the only people above Crane's pay grade. We met in a secure office building downtown. The agent, Maria Delgado, listened carefully as Larson laid out the evidence: Nancy's fake grants, Todd's shell companies, Crane's approvals. When he finished, she exhaled sharply. "That's serious," she said. "But if you're right, this goes way beyond one county. There could be a statewide network." Larson nodded grimly. "That's what we're thinking." Delgado leaned back. "Then you both need to disappear from the paper trail. No emails, no calls through county channels. If Crane suspects you're going above him, he'll bury this." I frowned. "So what now?" She stood. "Now we collect quietly. You'll keep your normal duties, but start copying any grant-related data you access. Larson will handle chain of custody. When we have enough, we'll move fast." It wasn't what I wanted to hear, but it was something. That night, I sat on the porch again, the lake stretching out in front of me like black glass. The wind whispered through the trees, the kind of silence that usually calmed me, but not tonight. Nancy might have fallen, but her shadow was bigger than I realized. And if Crane was behind her, then the rot went deeper, all the way into the system I thought I could trust. Behind me, Hannah stepped out, wrapping her arms around my shoulders. "You're doing the right thing," she said softly. "Yeah," I murmured. "But right doesn't always mean safe." She kissed my cheek. "Then be careful, okay? You've already proven your point. Don't let them take that away." I nodded, but my eyes stayed on the water because I could feel it, that quiet tension in the air, the storm building again just below the surface. And this time it wasn't just about an HOA. It was about power, politics, and the kind of corruption that hides behind polite smiles and public service titles. But I wasn't walking away. Not now. Because if people like Nancy and Crane got to play gods of the system, someone had to remind them, even gods can fall. Speech balloon, what would you do if you discovered your boss was protecting a criminal? Would you risk your career or your safety to expose them? The next 2 weeks felt like walking on glass. Every email I opened, every phone call I received, every set of footsteps in the hall, I analyzed them. Paranoia wasn't paranoia anymore, it was survival. Investigator Larson and I were moving carefully. Maria Delgado from the State Division had given us temporary clearance to gather more evidence before they moved in on Deputy Director Samuel Crane, but that came with one warning. If Crane catches on, he'll shut down the entire audit trail. He's not the kind of man who lets people expose him quietly. And she wasn't exaggerating. By now, we had proof connecting Crane to Nancy's HOA grant approvals and a half-dozen others in neighboring districts. But the paper trail was incomplete. The last few digital authorizations were stored on an offline backup server, only accessible from inside Crane's office. So to finish it, I'd have to walk right into the lion's den. That Monday morning, I arrived at the county building early. The hallways were still dim, the hum of fluorescent lights echoing faintly. My access badge beeped as I entered the restricted wing. Crane's office door was half open. I could see his desk, empty, organized, just like always. I took a breath, stepped in, and inserted the portable drive into his terminal. The computer whirred to life, and I started transferring the files Larson needed. 5 minutes, that's all I needed. Then, "Dawson," I froze. Crane was standing at the doorway, coffee in hand, eyes narrowing. "What are you doing in my office?" I turned slowly, forcing a calm smile. "Morning, sir. I was just looking for a copy of the zoning updates for District 8. Thought it might be on your shared drive." He set his coffee down, stepping closer. "Without asking. I didn't want to bother you before hours," I said evenly. He studied me for a long, quiet second, then smiled. "Always so dedicated, aren't you?" My heart was pounding. "Just doing my job." "Well," he said, still smiling, "let's both keep it that way." He walked to his desk, taking a sip of his coffee, then added casually, "You know, I heard Delgado's been asking about internal grant records." My pulse quickened. He leaned back. "Funny, isn't it, how quickly word travels?" I nodded carefully. "Guess nothing stays secret for long around here." His eyes met mine, sharp as a blade. "That's true, Dawson, especially when people don't know how to keep them." That night, I told Larson everything. He knows, I said, pacing across his living room. He knows we're digging. Larson rubbed his temples. All right, then we fast-track it. I'll send the partial files to Delgado tonight. We can't risk another day. Before he could finish, his phone buzzed. He looked down, then his face drained of color. What is it? I asked. It's from Delgado, he said slowly. Her office got raided. All our case files are gone. State compliance is claiming it was a routine data inspection. But I didn't need him to finish. Crane had gotten to them first. The following morning, I arrived at work to find my county login suspended. My ID badge blinked red. The receptionist gave me a sympathetic look. Sorry, Dawson. Director Crane's office said your credentials are being temporarily reviewed. Temporarily reviewed. That's bureaucratic code for we're cutting you off. As I walked back to my truck, I spotted Todd Harrington standing by the front steps. Yes, that Todd, the former HOA vice president. He was smirking. You're having a rough week, he said, my stomach twisted. You should be in court, he shrugged. Charges dropped, lack of evidence. Bull, not when the man running the audit is your boss's golfing buddy. It hit me like a punch to the gut. Crane had buried the case against Todd to cover his tracks. Todd leaned in closer. You think Nancy was the boss? She was just the front. Crane ran the whole thing. We just collected the checks. I clenched my fists. So you admit it, he chuckled. Admit what? That the county rewards people who play the game right? You should have joined us, Dawson. Would have saved you a lot of trouble. Trouble like getting arrested? I shot back. He smirked again. Trouble like what's coming next. That night I went home and found my porch lights smashed. My shed door was open. Inside, my files, the printed HOA reports, the copies of Nancy's fake invoices were scattered across the floor. Every page soaked in water, destroyed. Someone had broken in and they'd made it personal. Hannah found me standing there, jaw tight, fists clenched. Who did this? She whispered. Someone who's scared, I said coldly. Someone trying to make me stop. She grabbed my hand. Please tell me you're done with this. It's not safe anymore. I turned to her slowly. If I stop, they win, and they'll keep doing this to other people, other neighborhoods, other families. Her eyes filled with tears. I don't care about them. I care about you. For a moment, I almost broke, almost agreed to walk away. But then I remembered Nancy's smug grin when she thought she was untouchable, and Crane's careful, mocking smile when he warned me to keep quiet. No, this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about responsibility. The next day, I met Larson at a quiet park near the lake. He looked exhausted, wearing the same wrinkled jacket from the night before. They're dismantling the task force, he said bitterly. Crane's claiming we violated data access policies. I'm being reassigned. They're burying it, I said. He nodded. Yeah, and fast. I took out my backup drive. Not if we leak it first. Larson's eyes widened. You're serious? I have copies of everything. Nancy's grant trails, Todd's LLCs, the proof Crane signed off on fraudulent payments. If we go to the press, they can't silence it all. He hesitated. That could end your career. I looked toward the lake, the sunlight glinting off its surface. Maybe, but if I don't, what was the point of any of this? He sighed. You've got guts, Dawson, I'll give you that. I smiled faintly. No, Larson, I've got nothing left to lose. That night I drove to the county limits, parked under an old oak tree, and connected my laptop to the drive. I sent the files to 3 recipients: Maria Delgado, state investigator, a journalist from the county ledger, and an encrypted drop for a whistleblower watchdog site. As the upload bar reached 100%, I exhaled, relief flooding through me. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. You really should have listened. Headlights flashed across the road behind me. A black SUV, windows tinted, engine idling. My pulse raced. I grabbed my laptop, yanked out the drive, and threw the truck into gear. The SUV lurched forward, headlights blinding in my rearview mirror. I turned hard onto a dirt road leading toward the lake. Tires screeched on gravel. They were following. But then a notification flashed on my screen. Upload complete. I grinned grimly. Too late. Moments later, I lost them, ducking into the forest trail behind the lake, heart hammering. Somewhere out there, the truth was finally public. Crane's empire was about to crumble, and Nancy's legacy of manipulation would take him down with it. When I finally got home, Hannah was waiting on the porch, tears in her eyes. Where were you? She cried. I saw the SUV. It's over, I said softly, pulling her into a hug. They can't hide anymore. Over her shoulder, I saw the reflection of my house lights on the lake, flickering, steady, like beacons in the dark. For the first time in a long time, I felt something real, not peace. Not victory, just truth, and that was enough. Speech balloon, what would you do if your own boss was part of a criminal network and you were the only one who could expose it? The next morning started like any other, quiet, gray, and heavy with fog over the lake. But that calm didn't last. By 8:15 a.m., my phone began buzzing nonstop. Then my inbox exploded. Dozens of unread messages. Journalists, colleagues, even neighbors. The subject line was everywhere. County whistleblower exposes corruption scandal, director under investigation. It had happened. The files I uploaded last night were live. The watchdog group verified every document, and the county ledger published a front-page exposé titled, "Routine Inspections, Dirty Deals, How a County Director and HOA Officials Exploited Homeowners." They had everything: the fake permits, the grant laundering, the internal memos, and my name wasn't hidden. Sources say the evidence came from County Building Inspector Dawson Hale, whose own property was illegally entered by the Lakeside HOA earlier this year. My hands trembled. Hannah stood beside me, reading over my shoulder. "They printed your name," she whispered. "I know. You're not scared?" I looked at her, and for once I was. "No, not anymore." By noon, the county building looked like a crime scene. Police cruisers lined the curb. State investigators in dark suits carried boxes of files out through the lobby, and at the center of it all, Samuel Crane in handcuffs. He didn't fight. He didn't shout. He just looked defeated. When he saw me standing across the street, he stopped. For a moment, our eyes met through the chaos, a silent acknowledgement of how this had all come full circle. Then he looked away, escorted into the back of a state vehicle. Beside him, I saw another face, Nancy Westbrook, the HOA president, her once perfect hair disheveled, mascara running down her face. She tried to cover it, but the cameras caught everything. And Todd, he was there too, being led away by two deputies, still smirking like he thought he'd somehow get out of it again. But he wouldn't this time. None of them would. The fallout was massive. County officials resigned within days. The governor's office announced a full audit of the entire zoning department. HOA boards across 3 counties were suspended pending investigation. For a week, it felt like justice was actually working for once. Larson called me that Friday. His voice carried both exhaustion and pride. "You did it, man," he said. "They're calling this one of the biggest internal corruption busts in a decade." "We did it," I corrected. He chuckled. "You know what Delgado said? She's recommending you for a commendation, Public Service Integrity Award." I laughed quietly. "After everything, I might just take a long vacation before any awards. Just make sure it's somewhere with no HOAs," Larson joked. The next day, I finally went back to the lake. The air was crisp and the water mirrored the golden sunset. My cabin, or what was left of it, had been cleared for rebuilding. The county had officially granted restitution for the demolition, along with a hefty compensation package. But I didn't want a bigger cabin or fancier land. I wanted peace. As I stood by the water, hammer in hand, Hannah joined me, holding a new sign we'd made together. It read, "Private property, respect it." We planted it in the ground near the edge of the driveway, not as a warning, but as a reminder of everything that had happened. She turned to me. "You think it's really over?" I smiled faintly. "For them, yeah. For me, it's just the start of something better." She leaned against me, and for a long time we just watched the sunlight dance over the ripples. A few weeks later, I got an unexpected letter, a formal one, embossed with the state seal. Inside was a note. "To Mr. Dawson Hale, for your integrity and courage in exposing systemic corruption at both local and state levels. Your actions led to significant policy reform and protected countless property owners. We thank you." Signed, Maria Delgado. Tucked behind it was a second letter, handwritten, unmarked, no return address. It said simply, "You were right to fight. I was wrong to follow orders. Thank you for not giving up. N. Nancy." For a moment, I didn't know how to feel. Anger, pity, closure. I settled on something softer, understanding. People like her, like Crane, like Todd, they thought power made them untouchable. But power built on deceit always collapses. 2 months later, I was back at work, not for the county anymore, but consulting privately for small towns trying to reform their HOA oversight. My first project. Setting up transparency systems that made sure no one, ever again, could authorize permits without homeowner approval. It felt poetic in a way. Hannah called it revenge with a paycheck. I called it redemption. One afternoon, while reviewing a new zoning plan, I got an email from a familiar name, Delgado. Subject, "Update case closed." Crane took a plea deal. Nancy and Todd both testified. You'll be happy to know the HOA dissolution is complete. Properties are being returned to private management. It's over, Dawson, for good. I leaned back in my chair, staring out the window at the calm lake outside. Over, the word didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt peaceful. That weekend, I rebuilt my cabin porch plank by plank just like before. When I was done, I sat there with Hannah as the sun went down. "I keep thinking about how it started," she said softly. "Just a trip, a vacation, and how one routine inspection changed everything." "Yeah," I said, smiling faintly. "Guess they shouldn't have broken into the wrong guy's house." She laughed quietly, leaning her head on my shoulder. And as the sky turned orange and the water glowed gold, I realized something simple, something I wish I'd known from the start. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers through the cracks, waiting for someone to listen. And when it finally speaks, it's louder than fear, stronger than silence, and more permanent than power.